Today I'm flying the mast. This should be fun, and maybe a little scary. All the way up there. Good thing I'm not afraid of heights. Today's Sailing Vessel Adventure Cruise is getting a rigging inspection with the yacht rigger here in St. Pete.
That's right, we've had this rigging inspection scheduled for a little while now, but it's more important today than ever because we just went through Hurricane Ian.
Yes, and we are so grateful to the yacht rigger for helping us have this inspection today. And we're also really excited to learn the lessons because safety is the utmost important. So watch this video for some great lessons in safety when it comes to rigging inspections. We have Stephen and Brian here. So excited to do this inspection with you guys and just really learn a lot. We're gonna go through a whole lot of lessons today. Lesson 1, what do we need to know?
Safety first.
Absolutely.
Safety is no accident.
So first thing we want to do is make sure during the inspection, because we are going to go up the mast, that the rig does not fall down while we're up there. So we look for anything obvious and serious at deck level. So we're going to start looking at all the bottom components, glance up the rig, make sure there's nothing too scary going on. And then after that, start figuring out how we're going to get up there safely and take things from there.
Absolutely. And you've both told me that you have stepped on boats where you have physically said, I am not going up that mast. This does not look safe.
You can tell from the deck level that the ones up there aren't going to be any better. And so, yeah, the ones that are getting the most salt down here, if they don't look up to par to hold it up in the first place, then I don't need to climb to tell you that you need issues.
Anything from a massive amounts of corrosion to fully cracked fittings, multiple broken strands in the rigging, or
broken chain plates.
Broken chain plates, exactly. There's
bulkheads
a
that
myriad
are
of
rotted
things.
that the chain plate is bolted to, so the whole bulkhead might move. Things like that.
All of those have happened to us where we
We're absolutely
have just
listing things that we've seen.
said,
Wow.
I'm not going up here today.
Yeah.
Okay, all good things to know. Let's get to it.
Wire inside this unit that we obviously can't see because it's covered in aluminum, but what we can do is look as closely as we can at the bottom terminal here. So we're going to make sure that the cotter pin, this little pin right here, is secure and in place because this is what stops the clevis pin, the bigger one, from falling out. So that one looks really good. It is in place. And then I do try and look up as far as I can and also feel just to see if there was any kind of crack or serious corrosion going on in here. We have before taken these apart and found one half of this toggle completely broken. So it's possible to happen, but this one looks really good, nice and shiny. And then the next thing we want to do is feel the bearings in the furling unit itself, because there's sets of bearings inside here that allow you to furl the sail. So this feels nice and smooth. It's well, as smooth as it's going to be for this type of furler. And the same thing with these upper bearings here. So this feels nice and smooth. We don't have grease pouring out. There's no wear and tear, so it doesn't wobble on the unit because it slides up and down. And yeah, sometimes you see the bearing seals have popped out and there'll be grease kind of spattered all around this unit, and same thing for underneath here. So no visual indication here whatsoever that there's anything problematic going on.
People may be wondering, why is a rigging inspection important?
Great question. The mast on a sailboat experiences all kinds of very high loads and cyclical loading, and there's corrosion at play. So there's a lot of very strenuous activity going on to the rig, to the rigging, and if you don't inspect it and the rig falls down, you're gonna have it's a really bad day. Someone could get killed, someone could get badly hurt, the boat could be severely damaged, you could have to abandon ship if you're far offshore. So it's just a very high load situation that is very bad if the mast falls down.
Absolutely. And frequency, how often should we be inspecting these rigs?
Depending on the age of the rigging, on a newer rig, anywhere under 5 years old, typically only after an offshore passage. So it depends on how much you use your boat.
Sure.
And then as it ages, especially down in the tropics, as you start getting closer to the 7 to 10 year mark, you should absolutely be doing annual inspections. And then from age 10 up through 15 years, annual to biannual. So maybe hitting it twice a year, depending again on how much you sail. And then after 15 years, you just need to call it. The stainless steel it's done its work. It needs to be put to bed.
We had a 6-day crossing across the Gulf of Mexico when we bought the boat. Obviously, she's now been through a hurricane. I would say those are two major things that qualifies her to see what's going on, check and make sure everything's still safe.
Absolutely. The one point perspective is, and not everyone realizes this, a mast on a boat like this, a mast boom and sails and rigging is easily a $50,000 replacement cost, and the rigging inspection should cost you somewhere in the region of, depending where you are in the world, $250 through $500, $600, $700, but the ratio there is pretty attractive.
Yeah.
Something else to keep in mind is that your insurance for your vessel. Check your insurance policy, see what their requirements are. Some of them are requiring inspections on a certain basis. Some of them have a maximum age of rigging, so it's something to certainly be aware of.
All right, so one of the next things that we're going to look at on deck level is the martingale and beam of the front catamaran. So there are very, very high loads on this forestay when you pull back on the sail and the sail's going this way.
Sure.
This is trying to come up and bend that beam. So this cable here is the backbone of the boat. If this breaks, the whole thing breaks. And so this is a very thick piece of wire, which obviously tells you that it's under a lot of load. So we're going to inspect this portion of it. We're going to inspect the parts here for the compression, because all of that is being held in compression. So first thing I look at is down in here. So where each one of these wires goes into this swage fitting, there's 19 individual wires, but if any one wire breaks, that's 30% of loss. That's not 1/19 of loss, that's 30% of loss. And so it's a big deal where they come in right here to feel each and every single one of them. If one of them wiggles or moves, then you know it's not connected anymore, and that's no good. So I'm gonna look in there too, check the electrical connections for the bow light, check the bolts and see if there's any crazing or gel coat deformations. So fiberglass breaking down here, that all looks very good. Gonna go up, follow that all the way over to the other side. So over here, we're gonna come up here and do the exact same thing and look for the wires where they come in here, see for any corrosion or breakages. On this, if there's any corrosion spots, we take some Scotch-Brite and wipe it off, but this one looks pretty good, so I don't need to do that. Then we come down here, make sure the turnbuckle looks good, make sure that the locking nut is decently set and that there's enough bury in here. This is borderline getting a lot of threads, which means that it's adjusted out all the way, but it is still in the point where the threads are still engaged, so we're okay. No corrosion down here. I say the beam looks good. Let's go to the next stay. Since this is a 3-point rig, which means that the forestay and the 2 cap shrouds are basically what's holding this thing vertical. So those 3 cables are what's up. You look around the boat, there's nothing else holding that mast up, so they're very important. We're coming in here, we're doing the exact same inspection for looking for the wires where they meet here, looking to see if there's any heavy corrosion or issues in that. There does not appear to be. That looks very clean and nice. Same thing here, making sure that this is all the way engaged into those threads here, making sure that both of these are pinned, looking to see where 2 things touch. If there's ever any 2 pieces of metal touching, you're going to find a battle to the death. This one right here has a little scratch. This one probably has a little bit more of a scratch. Eventually that will wear out and break, so I would flag that and tell them to put a little vinyl insulator or something like that to keep those from doing that. Come down here, look at the pins. Those all look good. Make sure that at the highest load places here and here that there's no cracking or corrosion. Then last but not least, we're going to come over here on the chain plate and inspect that each one of these fasteners looks well seated and centered in its hole. There's a very rare occasion, but on occasion they will look like every single one of them is on the bottom side of the hole because the chain plate has moved up a bit. And so that doesn't happen very often, but it is something we go to look for.
While we're at deck level, we do want to take a look at the lifelines, or guardrails as they're sometimes referred to. So this is also rigging wire, and you want to be inspecting for potentially any broken strands or significant wear and tear where the wires pass through the stanchions, and then check your end connections to look for any issues. So right here we have a ring that is keeping this pin from falling out. Right here we have absolutely no ring from keeping that pin from falling out. So this lifeline absolutely could just become completely free. That pin will simply fall out right now. In fact, I can probably press it out. Yeah, so we could make that fall out very easily.
So one of the other things that we're looking for during a rigging inspection is also the running rigging. So running rigging is all the soft things that move things. So standing rigging is parts that don't move. Running rigging is anything that moves. And so when I look at this, I can tell that it's already starting to fray a little bit. It's getting towards the end of its life, but it still has service life in it. Now if I keep going down and I'm inspecting the whole length of it, we're going to come over here and we see that it has a spot right here. That spot right there says it is in the end of its life. And so I would not take this out sailing. I would replace this before I went sailing again. So this type of line is called double braid, and it's because it has a jacket of line. It also has a core on the inside. Once the jacket is completely frayed through, the core starts to break down, and it needs both the core and the jacket for its strength. So it's definitely in time for replacement.
So the next area of deck level inspection is going to be the lower section of the mast itself and the boom and the vang. So right here where the mast makes contact with the deck, as you can imagine, is a very high load area. There's tons of compression here. So we want to look and confirm that the mast is sitting completely flat on the deck, not point loading on the front or back or the side. The sides are very unusual, but it could be point loading on the back. But this one is sitting nice and flat. If it were to point load, we've seen masts several times, multiple times actually, with cracks from the point loading. After that, we start to look at the mast boom connection here. Obviously another fairly high load area. We want to look for play, make sure that nothing is sloppy or moving around too much. All these rivets are sitting nice and flush. The bolt nut is fully engaged. The nut's fully engaged here. We move down to the vang. Same thing going on here. We want to make sure that the bracket and all the hardware attaching it is in good shape. So all our pins are well located. Cotter pins are in place. There's no excess play at all. Sometimes we can really rock these things around, at which point we need to do something about it. And then we'll make our way to the back of the boom here. And we want to make sure that our sheet attachment points are secure, not wearing or showing any heavy signs of corrosion. Those look good. And then the very back of the boom here, we have these shivs that your reef lines and alcohol run through, and these don't look bad at all. Sometimes they're really sun oxidized and starting to chip and flake away. And if these were to break or explode, what that means is then the line would be riding on a pin only, and you're going to have a reef line break or fail while you're sailing. And that's just, again, not a fun time. People get hurt, and you have some repairs to do.
So Adventure Cruise is looking really good with the deck inspection. We have now passed through the deck inspection, and now another critical point, lesson 2, which is how to get up the mast safely.
When going up the mast, you want to go on a high quality or halyard that is in good condition. Hopefully all the lines in your boat are high quality. But what you want to do is make sure that there's no significant chafe issues or physical obvious damage in the halyard, especially up toward the top. So what we always do is try and pull the halyard through the mast by a good distance so that you can see any potentially damaged areas and get a good visual indication that the halyard's in good shape. The next part is you don't want to go up the mast on hardware. You want to go up on a knot that you tie yourself, because you don't know what this hardware's been subject to in its life, or if there's any corrosion going on. There could be corrosion going on these pins here. It's a snap shackle too, so it can be released fairly easily. Give you a one-way ticket down to the deck, so that would be a bad time. Yeah. So when going aloft, we like to tie knots. Now there's a bowline tied in this, but if this were spliced to the shackle, you'd have a hard time getting it off. So what we're going to do here is pass a bight of line through the chair, so effectively doubling it. I need to give myself a little slack here. And now we're going to tie a bowline. If you're unsure how to do this, please don't experiment when you're going up the mast. So now...
We learned that in sea school.
Yes. So solid bowline, now you're relying only on the line, no bits of hardware involved, through both hoisting points on your chair, and now you're safely ready to go aloft.
Are all bosun chairs created equal? What do we need to know about that?
We really like the Harken bosun's chair, not only because we like Harken, but because it's comfortable. It's all we use for our teams. It's got a really nice seat pad right here, and they're readily available, and they're just really well built. We've been using them for years and years and never had any issues with them. So.
And you've been up, we've guessed, what?
Somewhere in north of 2,000 masts. It's hard to say, but hundreds per year for 20 years. It's been a while.
So you've all got this down, so I should be in good hands today.
Yes, you are definitely safe.
All right, so now we are on lesson 3, which is winch handling, another important part of the rigging inspection.
And so not just the rigging inspection, but the getting up there. So you got to get up there safe. So the winch is the powerful part that'll get you up there. And the halyard that he's already showed you how to tie on, we're going to go ahead and take up some slack till there is no more slack on his chair. This is a clutch here. We're going to close that. That stops the line from being able to pay back. I can still pull it in, but I can't pull it back out. So that's one line of safety. So now, right now, he's bouncing on the chair and he is loaded up. So I'm going to take this here and wrap clockwise. The last strap comes up to the peeler. That's called a peeler because it takes it off of the drum, peels it off, and puts it into the self-feeder. Not all winches have self-tailers. So self-tailers are actually gripping the line here, so I can just watch it come off the line. If it did not have that, I would have to keep tension on it and keep pulling it, or it wouldn't do anything. So this, we have the convenience of a modern catamaran, which has electricity to it. So that's actually really nice.
Love that.
The other things that we like to talk about before going up is hand signals, because this winch, as you could tell, it's loud. So it makes noise in my ear. I might not be able to hear him if he's yelling to me. It's very powerful, so we don't want to get him caught up underneath some of the rigging. So if his leg is sticking out and he's coming up and he says, hey, 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 and you're not looking at him, you need to be looking at him, okay? So you have your hand here, peeling the line off, but you keep visual contact with him to make sure that if he's telling you stop or go or down. So you go over some hand signals first before you ever go. So the way to get a chair on is you're gonna put a foot here and a foot here. So go ahead and pass those through on either side of that center strap here. And go ahead, up you go. Now I'm gonna hold up on this. We wanna get this cinched tight. Go ahead and pull that tight on if you want. And what that strap is gonna do is control how far you can lean back.
Okay.
And so you're gonna want it kind of snug so that you're not feeling like you're insecure in the chair.
We don't want that crooked that way.
No,
do
you
we?
want that in the middle, so you can just work the whole strap around if you need to. Yeah.
Hey, we're tight
Now-
on the clutch if she wants to sit down.
Thank you. That was the next thing I was gonna do is check your clutch.
Whoa!
Yep. Are you all set? Sit down. All right.
And so one
Here,
of the
I'm
things
gonna stand
that-
back up for a second.
Yeah, of course. One of the things that I do before I actually go up a rig is once I got the chair set up and the chair is adjusted to the way it feels comfortable for me, and you're still on deck level, sit down hard. Yeah, just sit. Now you're gonna want to scoot your butt back in the chair, and you'll be way more comfortable. So it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like you're tipping out of the
Keep your
chair.
lower back
Yeah.
nice
So,
and straight.
so that this actually
Okay.
tensions up on you so that it feels like you can lean back and not fall out of the chair. Does that
Okay.
feel like that to you now? So this is, all right? Yeah, so feels comfortable, feels secure. If not, then we need to tighten this a little
As
more.
comfortable as I imagine it.
It's not
feel.
gonna be a lazy boy for sure. So that's all snug, that's all good.
I mean, I can lean all the way
You
back.
can lean all the way back, but you're not gonna fall out.
Yeah, you can definitely
Yeah,
lean back.
yeah,
Okay.
you can lean back, that's okay, because you
That's
need to reach for
expected.
things.
Yeah.
But I just wanna make sure that it's not gonna slip out. And,
All right.
and if this strap here slips under you when you lean back, then it's not tight enough.
Okay.
All right. So now that you've sat down hard and to trust the equipment, you want to make sure that everything is strong enough. So stand back up and kind of bounce into it because it should be able to take a shock load. So you're going to jump. Yep, exactly. So now you hear that bouncy, squeaky sound. You know that you've loaded it up more than you're ever going to load it up by sitting in it.
Sure.
And you did it a foot off the deck instead of 50 feet off the deck.
Yeah.
So that's a much better way to test that.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go over to the winches and you guys are going to go up the mast. So you're going to get here, put your feet out, touch the mast. There you go. Yeah, keep them legs straight or straight-ish and walk. So right now I'm holding you from going that way.
Oh, I
so
see
you
what
want
you
to
mean.
push this foot there. Then
It's
knees
also
just a little.
perfectly okay though if you can't and bend your legs and just kind of put your hand on it.
Yeah, if you bend your
make a
knees a little
tripod.
more like
Okay.
that and kind
And
of crawl.
you do not need to hold on to the halyard ever.
Ooh.
Right.
If you're holding on
Yeah,
here,
that's gonna be hard to
And
stay
this
there.
this is unnecessary.
Yeah.
'Cause the chair will hold you whether
like
your
holding
hands
on
it or
here
not,
takes one hand away from
from
your
doing what you want to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whether
So-
that's camera work or keeping one hand for you.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna come down here in the cockpit.
Say my prayers. As we're hoisted up the mast, Stephen is quick to point out all of the hardware, gear, and instruments that run the length of the 70-foot tall mast.
That's as high as you want to get.
All right.
So one thing we didn't talk about was, in terms of safety, is how close you want to let the halyard get to the hardware that it's running through.
Okay.
And so obviously it would be a bad thing if we jammed this knot really hard up into there. So you always want to stop the person who's hoisting you a couple feet short. One, to make sure they're
Sure.
paying attention, so they actually do stop.
Right.
And then tell them, hey, I've got about 18 inches left to go, or 2 feet, whatever that is.
Sure.
and then have them bump you up the final rest of the way and then stop the Mast Safety window.
All right.
One thing we want to keep an eye out for is damage to any of the running rigging up the mast. And these are the lazy jacks, so not a critical component, but that is definitely some pretty significant chafe that looks pretty well worn, so that's going to need to be addressed. Now you're going to slowly kick yourself out and around there. Nicely done. He's going to slow down a little bit. Keep going. Keep not push on the bar itself. Just push yourself out in the way. Yes, please. And you can stop him there.
Okay.
Nicely done.
My footing.
You're good.
On my feet. We're good.
Just in time for sunset.
Woo!
The one final thing we noticed here is that this is a turnbuckle, this part right here, and here's another turnbuckle, and you can see that there's two threads that engage into this turnbuckle body. This thread is typically right hand, and this thread is typically left hand, so when you adjust it, it tightens the shroud. What you're looking for is to get full engagement of the turnbuckle. These threads should penetrate all the way through the threaded part of the turnbuckle body and be pinned. This turnbuckle right here, if you come around this way and you look through the slots here, you can't see any threads penetrating, so they weren't able to put a cotter pin in it, and therefore they used a lock nut. But they're so short that when we measure them, the threads are only engaging about halfway, and that's not adequate for load rating. So this turnbuckle is rated to operate at a given load, and the way it is right now, it's simply not going to do that. So this is too short. Needs to be made longer. Fortunately, there is a fitting, a mechanical fitting we can use that is longer and is perfectly safe and acceptable, so we don't have to replace the entire stay. We can get away with just the fitting.
Final thoughts here. What do you think overall of the rigging on Adventure Cruise?
I would say overall we got a pass, and there was just a few little details we'd like to go over. So we're going to replace the furling line, put a cotter pin in the lifeline, and replace this fitting here. And I think you're good to go.
And a couple things up on the mast. There was the masthead electrical is not strain relieved, so we need to do some strain relief up there for the wind instrument and the masthead light. And there was some chafe on the lazy jack. So nothing critical at all. Rigging has been replaced. You could go sailing just fine as things are right now, apart from this right here. This is the one thing that absolutely needs to be addressed before you go sailing and put the rig under load.
Sure. All right. Brian, Steven?
Pleasure.
Yacht Rigger?
Our
Guys,
pleasure.
thank you so much. We appreciate it. Again, Yacht Rigger sponsoring this video. Check out their website, yachtrigger.com. Next week, we're taking you to the neighborhood. We're giving you a look at life on the dock, our routines, neighbors, and friends we're making along the way.